people? My name is Mike Shaner, and this is Sedition. It's been a long off season. It's been a hell of a summer. I've been busy becoming even more free than I was before. You know, we can talk about politics, we can talk about ending this measure or the deceitfulness of naming of that bill. We should. It's fun to us political junkies. But the ultimate goal should always be about abolishing the tyrannical state. That isn't something that can be done at the voting booth. It isn't a goal that can be accomplished by electing all libertarians to every federal office or equal. It's not something that can be accomplished by equal access to a debate stage or ballot access or anything of the sort. It can only be done as an act of open air rebellion. In short, live your life in peaceful, open defiance. Buy your groceries from a local farmer. If you can deal in cash, that's great. If you can barter goods and services, that's even better. When possible, do business with someone who doesn't have a government license and won't pay income tax, even if that person happens to be illegal. We should all be illegal. That's the fucking goal. All right. This year we're going to do things a little different. I'm going to divide it up into segments if I can. This first segment here is called What's Left, What's Right, and What's Wrong. And I've got to thank the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire for giving me a great opening to this new segment. If you're watching this, you probably already know that LPNH tweeted a mocking image of McCain crying over a devil at his funeral. Predictably, this had the Star Wars crowd gasping and clutching for pearls in a way that really could only be comparable to if they had heard someone say we shouldn't trust government vaccines or there really is a definition of men and women. What was a little less predictable was that some of the more conservative libertarians responded. You know, I can respect someone not cheering it. I can respect you being uncomfortable with it. I think if you have an ounce of class in you, you're not really comfortable with mocking death. So I get it. I can respect anyone. I can't respect anyone coming to McCain's defense or condemning the tweet. I wouldn't have posted it, but I'm proud and I understand why they did. I don't think those who are having a hissy fit, I don't think they're being honest. You know, if the tweet had been a picture of Osama bin Laden's children mourning his decaying body, most of the same people would have cheered it. But even those of us who have too much class to mock, even the devil did, would have rolled their eyes and moved on. You know, if it was Hitler's kid, if it was somebody, if it was a consensus evil, everybody would have rolled their eyes and moved on. The ones that are pretending to be upset, they're doing so because they think it makes us look bad. That's it. They think we offended the wrong people. We offended the establishment. They think we may have political differences, but we're still all countrymen and we should treat each other better. That's a great way to live. I mean, to be philosophically at peace and forgiving every transgression and turning the other cheek to all the people all the time, sure, it's a lofty ideal, and I try to live my life that way day to day. It's also not realistic, and it's certainly not what the other side practices if someone says something they find offensive, or, you know, if it was something said about some marginalized group that some marginalized group might get offended over, they don't forgive and forget. You know, they don't turn the other cheek. The truth is, man, we're at war. Some of you don't realize this. McCain is a person who has made fame and fortune off of her evil daddy's name. She's taken his torch and ran with it. She volunteered herself to the spotlight. It isn't right to hold children accountable for the sins of their parents until those children publicly take up those sins and call for more of the same. That's what she did. And that's what she continues to do. Meghan McCain would advocate for having me jailed for saying this, would have you jailed for would have them jailed for tweeting it, and have you jailed for listening to it. She's openly called for Julian Assange to be sentenced to Gitmo just long enough to be sent to hell, where he should rot for all eternity. There's absolutely nothing wrong with celebrating the death of evil. We shall all rejoice when evil dies. When evil perishes, we celebrate. A lot of you don't understand the seriousness of the situation we're in. You're worried about not offending people or being too extreme and not winning elections. I have news for you, Hoss. We're in an extreme situation. New laws are passed every day. Government redefines words every day. It's become offensive to call men men and women women. It's become offensive to say children shouldn't have sex changes until they're old enough to understand the ramifications of that decision. They're trying to make the word pedophile offensive, not because of the offensive nature of it, not because of the sickness behind the pedophiles or pedophilia, but because it offends the fucking pedophiles. 20 years ago, I told an ex-girlfriend that by the end of our lives, child molesters would be considered a heroic and oppressed group of people afforded special protections. The movement's begun. Now they're trying to make us call them minor attracted people. They've redefined what vaccines are. They've convinced people to take experimental drugs and cover their faces for 2 years. Think of how much the left hates Donald Trump. And then think of how much the right hates vaccines. Donald Trump rushed the vaccines through the process for political purposes. He did it hoping to get them out in time for the election so he could get some votes. And the left hates anyone who doesn't trust the vaccines. The right hates anybody that takes the vaccines but questions Trump. It's a psyop, like, it's so unimaginable. You couldn't write this conspiracy theory. You couldn't write this movie. There's government and there's us. If you're upset or you're worried about hurting the feelings of a monster or how it makes us look, then you don't realize how serious the situation is. That's why the tweet was necessary. People need to realize these aren't just people we disagree with. They're people who would put us in a cage. They hate our entire way of life. They jealous. They throw us in a cage for tweets, for showing up at the Capitol building, for existing. The tweet has people talking, has people debating, bringing attention to the situation. When's the last time the LP at all, much less a very small state affiliate, was featured on CNN? The Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, they made that happen. And I say kudos. And fuck tyrants. Fuck warmongers. Fuck terrorists. And anyone that feels sympathy for them, fuck you. Be loud, be honest, and be extreme. It's needed. The time to sit quietly and politely on virtue, it's gone, brother. It's time to be bold. It's time to be extreme. Speaking of government and media controlling the narrative, the other big issue in the news lately, student loan forgiveness. People asking whether or not the government should forgive student loan debt are asking the wrong question. The right question to ask is, why the fuck is government in a position to forgive or secure loans to anybody for any reason at any time? That's the issue. Should the government forgive student loans? No, of course not. Am I happy they did? I mean, yeah, kind of, if I'm honest. Sure, why not? It's so minuscule. It's a fucking teardrop in the ocean. When it comes to big government money problems, student loan forgiveness it's nothing. It's if you're someone who was feeling some kind of stress and this took a little weight off your shoulders, I'm genuinely pleased for you. I am. It doesn't hurt me and it doesn't hurt anyone else in a noticeable way. It's the equivalent of a gnat annoyance when it comes to inflation. The real issue is that they could do it and why they did it. This is who they are and this is what they do. They didn't do it to buy votes. Don't believe that nonsense. This isn't going to change anyone's votes. They did it because it keeps you and I distracted and divided. It's controlling the narrative. It has people arguing with such venom and vitriol. It's like it's a personal issue between us. I can be happy for you that maybe you're feeling some pain, and this takes a bit of that off your shoulders, while also knowing it's wrong and it exasperates a bigger issue. It's not a fairness issue. In real life, it doesn't matter that you got some of your loan paid off while someone else didn't, or whatever. It just doesn't matter. But, so how do I say this the right way? it's government. This is what government, in conjunction with the media, this is what they do. They get you arguing, and then you take things personally, and it becomes this giant and raging issue on both sides, and both sides coming out looking like petty assholes who now feel justified in their stance, because when you're arguing with a petty asshole, it makes you feel like you're right. It's a pretty brilliant trick, and they're damn good at it. The real issue here is the cost of education has become astronomical, because this is what government does. Education in America was once a shining example to the world. It was a brilliant and beautiful thing. It produced brilliant and beautiful people. And the state-run mafia, when they see something like this happening, think roads and travel, for instance. When the government sees something like this happening, they decide they need to take the credit for it. They get involved. They start subsidizing. They start manipulating. And pretty soon, it's reduced us to a steaming pile of shit that no one can afford, but everyone thinks they need and couldn't have without the state. It's a fucking amazing. For real. It's a fucking amazing what they've done, how they can take something that works so well and so proper before they got involved in it, ruin it, make it unaffordable, and then make everybody think they have to have it and couldn't have had it without the government. See? It's amazing. You got to hand it to them. I mean, no kidding. You have to hand it to them on that. It's, yeah, anyway. But that's what we should be discussing. Why do we allow government to get involved with education and fuck it up? And how do they have the ability to back, produce, or forgive loans, private loans? That's what's fucked up. I'd rather them pay off your student loans than spend the money blowing people up and putting people in prison. I'd rather them give out food stamps to poor people and pay for everybody in the whole world to go to college than wage a war all over the world to blow up and enslave other poor people in other countries. The truth is they're going to do fucking both. They're going to do whatever they want to do. They're going to do both. They're going to blow people up. They're going to spend the money to keep us arguing, to keep us dividing. They're going to keep us looking like assholes. It's up to you to opt out. It's up to us to do it. They're going to fucking do it. So what we need to be discussing is how do we stop it? When you bitch that your neighbor got something and you didn't get it, you sound like a petty asshole. Crying about fairness. When you say you don't care if somebody else pays for your stuff, you sound like a selfish asshole. I'm entitled. That's how they want you to sound. It's not about fairness. Nothing about taxation is fair. Taxation makes people who don't have children pay for public schooling. It makes people who don't believe in abortion pay for abortion. It makes a single young man subsidize the tax returns of a married couple with children. The child tax credit. That tax return you got, a single man with no children, they paid for that. Nobody's bitching about the fairness of that aspect. It's not about fairness. Taxation isn't fair. Nothing about taxation is fair. Quit complaining about your neighbor's student loan repayment. Stop paying your fucking taxes. That's what. Stop paying taxes. If you want equity and fairness, opt the fuck out. As long as you pay your protection tribute to the mafia, you might as well quit pretending you have a say in what they do with it. It isn't the taxpayers' money. It's not the taxpayers. It's not your money. The government isn't spending your money. It used to be your money. It's money that used to belong to an individual and now it belongs to the state. As long as they have the power to take it, it's absurd, it's so foolish to believe that you have the power to... If they have the power to take it, it's insane to think they don't have the power to see how they spend it. That's insane. Buy some land, grow some food, opt the fuck out. That brings us to occupational licensing. Occupational licensing is the biggest scam in the history of scams. It's a corporate scheme that keeps poor people in poverty, supplies multiple revenue streams to Big Daddy government and corporations, and it stifles industry. In effect, it's a resurrection of the old company store. So what used to happen in the old days, like mining companies, you'd have these whole mining towns, and they would keep you indebted to the store. So basically, your paycheck would go back into the store, into the company. The company housing, company is the whole deal. That came to an end, and a lot of people will tell you it came to an end because of because of regulation. It didn't. It came to an end because it existed because of regulation. I need to do a show on that at some point. But it came to an end because of a free market. Well, what the government does instead is, here's how it works. The government says if you want to cut hair or drive a truck or put in African braids or sell real estate for your neighbor, for instance, you have to go to a state-approved school. Hey, they'll help you get a loan for that, though, I heard. Once you get out of school, you have to go to work for someone else who went through the same pyramid scheme a long time ago. You have to work for them for many years until eventually you've bought your way out of slavery and can inflict the treachery on your own underlings. Come on. No one believes you need 1,900 hours of classroom time to be able to legally cut hair. Well, you do need it to be able to legally cut hair in Texas, but you don't need it to effectively cut hair. What it's built to do is supply schools with clients and business owners with employees and restrict the competition. Here's a story. So a long time ago, my grandfather, raising 7 kids and not having a whole lot of opportunities out there, he taught himself to drive a truck. Became a pretty damn good truck driver. Ended up having a construction company and never rich. I mean, never. I lost my granddad in April. It was. I miss him. I think about him every single day. You know, he raised me. And anyway, he taught his sons how to drive a truck. And back then, you didn't even need a CDL license. And back then, if you look, actually, it's funny. There were a lot less accidents, percentage-wise, numbers-wise. In any instance, there were less when there were less licensed truck drivers. But anyway, he taught his sons to drive a truck. And so fast forward to present day, my uncle has been driving some form of commercial truck since he was 14, 15 years old, legally since he was 16 years old. He's got a son. His son worships him. And when his son isn't in school, his son is in the truck with his dad. And they've always, he could probably drive a diesel better than a lot of state school instructors. So in the past, what you had to do was you had to go and get your license, and if you could pass the test and show you had the skills to drive a truck, then they give you your license, then you go get a job. Well, a lot of these schools came along, and they started making some money, and you know the trucking industry is a big industry. So anyway, my uncle has been teaching his son to drive a truck for the same way he learned since he was a teenager, you know. So, and he's still a teenager. He's 18. Now, Pete Buttigieg, our Secretary of Transportation, the federal government has passed a law that says you have to go to a truck driving school. And so, my cousin, my nephew, could go and teach one of those. He's I guarantee you a better driver than any instructor there, but he can't. He's not qualified anymore. He has to go pay thousands of dollars, take out a loan, a government loan, and pay thousands of dollars to go to a truck driving school where they'll probably fuck up everything that my uncle taught him and he'll have to go back and relearn. And it prevents him from going straight to work. The reason for that is because the truck driving companies lobbied the federal government to pass this law. People think big corporations hate regulation. They love regulation. It keeps other people from entering the workplace. And then with truck driving, what it does is you will get they say, okay, you can come and we'll teach you how to drive a truck, but you have to work for us for a year in lieu of a tuition. So now they have employees who are going to come in at under market wages because they're getting the schooling that they don't fucking need, that they could learn on the job. This is how all occupational licensing works. It's I don't know. It's a sad situation. What you need to do is, if you can, find a local farmer and buy your food. Buy raw milk. Find a local dairy to get your dairy products from. If you can't grow your own, if you can grow your own, that's the best thing to do. Second best thing to do is deal with somebody locally. If you know somebody in the neighborhood or somebody in the community who's a good carpenter, hire them to do your carpentry work. You know, anybody that isn't paying income taxes, anybody that is not getting that government license, anybody that don't get it, if you can go, if it's not going to hurt you financially, don't get it. Don't get if you know the chick in the neighborhood who's who's good at cutting hair, who's got a passion for it. Get them to do it. Pay people under the table. Pay people enough money to so that they don't have that initiative, that incentive to go out and get that licensing. Like occupational licensing is one of the. To tell me I have to get the free market would decide this. If I'm not good at my job, if I'm not a good cosmetologist, the word will spread. You're not going to come to me. The government wants their share. They want their donors happy. They want to keep you enslaved. Fuck them, man. Fuck that. Do your thing. I was thinking the other day when I was trying to prepare for this, I was thinking, what if the Ron Paul revolution had happened in 2022 with the technology we have now after Donald Trump? You know, Ron Paul, physically unimposing man, a regular looking dude, soft-spoken, quietly dignified. He always has the appearance of a kindly grandfather, even an eccentric uncle. Looking at Ron Paul, watching him, even listening to him speak, except on the one-off occasion, probably not leave you searching for adjectives of awe. And the ones you eventually settle on, it wouldn't be rock star or giant. That's not what, when you look at Ron Paul without knowing who he is, you don't think that rock star, that giant. But when it comes to libertarianism, Ron Paul's he's not a rock star. Ron Paul is the fucking rock star. Ron Paul, there is no libertarianism without Ron Paul, not in the modern sense of the world. If you subtract his influence from the libertarian philosophy, you'll be left with a few transvestites smoking weed while getting conned out of a few bucks from Nick Sarwark over a game of Dungeons and Dragons or some shit like that. It would be just this small group of nothing, over there talking about how they're offended and you should go get the vaccine. But that's what the modern Libertarian Party would be if there were. That's what modern libertarianism would be if there were no Ron Paul. There simply is no liberty movement without Ron Paul. How did that happen? How did this mild-mannered, unassuming, quiet old man inspire an entire generation of people young enough to be his grandchildren? He spoke the truth. He was bold. He was honest. He was extreme. To stand on a stage in 2008 and 2012 in a room full of establishment Republicans and tell them that heroin ought to be legalized, I don't have the talent with words to describe that level of bravery, that level of extremism. People think the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire or the Mises Caucus or Donald Trump even are extreme because they tweet things. Donald Trump was, Dr. Paul, that don't strike me down. Dr. Paul was revolutionary. Imagine if that revolution happened today, with the internet where it is today, with the alternative media having the reach it has today, post-Trump, post-Biden. Imagine the possibilities if someone were to have the balls to deliver a revolutionary message, to be bold and extreme and consistent. Dr. Paul said he was an imperfect messenger, but the message was perfect. He's still correct. There are people, especially in the established duopoly, who pretend that anything outside of the approved box of speech is extreme. And they've convinced so many of you so-called libertarians that in order to be taken seriously, you have to keep your conversation in that predefined box. Don't discuss abolishing the income tax. That's too extreme. Let's talk about lowering it. Don't say you want to abolish the Department of Education. For God's sake, you'll scare away the normies and we'll lose the election. Are you mad? As if we've been winning elections. As if quiet, polite, and right have won us any elections. As if that ought to even be the goal. The system's so fucking broken, we're not going to fix it. It wasn't designed to allow for a free people, and it sure as hell ain't evolving in that direction. You have to be bold. You have to be extreme. That just means being honest. That means calling war criminals, and that means saying that people who want to blow up and bomb poor people and put people in cages for not doing things that aren't hurting people. That means saying that those people are evil. It means saying they're bad. It means saying that we're not just two people who disagree with each other. we're fundamentally different people. We want fundamentally different things. And at the very least, we should be allowed a peaceful divorce. Be that voice. Do the things, do the work, get the fuck out. Don't depend on a party. Don't depend on politics. You're not going to vote your way out of this. It's that dream, that vision, that America, if it ever existed, it died a long time ago. Where we're at now is we need to be deciding what do we want for our children. What do we want for the generations past and our generation? We've brought it to the point that it is, and it's pretty well fucked. We need to figure out, are we going to let this totalitarianism continue to its eventual conclusion, or are we ready to go ahead, take the pain of letting the system collapse, and then starting over and hopefully providing a free one for the next generation? It's time. The message is perfect. The message is there. It takes action now. What if the Ron Paul revolution had happened in 2022? You know, it can.